The unusual invaded the life of a woman who asked that her first and last name not be indicated in the fall of 1972. This happened on the outskirts of the city of Novi Oskol, in an area that has long been built up with private one-story houses. The woman reports, "The evening was dark. It was drizzling outside. I hear someone knocking on the door. A voice comes from behind her. 'Give it, for Christ's sake, good people.' I unlocked the door and was surprised to see behind it a figure in a white robe to the toes, similar to a monastic robe. I wanted to slam the door in her face in confusion, but for some reason, I couldn't do it. The figure stepped over the threshold and entered the house, falling into a strip of light falling from a light bulb hanging from the ceiling. She was a very tall old woman with young eyes that amazed me. 'For Christ's sake, granddaughter,' she sang. 'Yes, I don't seem to be fit to be your granddaughter. I'm already quite a lot of years old, actually,' I said, confused. And the old woman said, 'You are not my granddaughter, not even my great-granddaughter. You are so much more to me.' Hearing these incomprehensible words, I was very scared. I don't know why. Mechanically, she picked up a loaf of bread from the table and thrust it into the hands of a wandering beggar woman. There were apples on the table. With both palms, I scooped up 5 apples into a handful and also handed them to the uninvited guest. The old woman, with a sharp gesture, pulled away my palms, folded together, and the apples fell to the floor. I bent over, by the way, completely unexpectedly for myself. "Don't cry," the old woman said in a sing-song voice. "Today is a great holiday that happens once every many, many years. Today the 6th star is born. You are a kind woman. So let this day be your holiday too. Today my dead children will come to you for the night." Where will they come from? From the other world. But not from the other world, but from our own. They don't look like people. They need a place to stay for the night. Will you shelter them? I felt dizzy from her terrible speeches. I wanted to get rid of the old woman as quickly as possible. "No," I answered firmly. "I won't let your dead children into my house. Reach out to your neighbors. Maybe they'll let me in." The old woman in a white robe flashed her eyes. "For 300 years now, I have been looking for a place to stay for them in your world," she announced, frowning. "And you even refuse to shelter them on holiday. Take your gifts." And she threw a loaf of bread on the floor and angrily kicked one of the apples scattered on the floor. I was completely taken aback and became sleepy. I absolutely did not understand what was actually happening. Just now, the beggar woman was almost tearfully begging me for alms, and now she is disgusted, even, in my opinion, with hatred, moving away from him. "Give me the tablecloth," ordered the uninvited guest and, moving her chin, pointed to the dining table, which stood some distance from her. I pulled the tablecloth off the table and silently handed it to the old woman. This old witch carelessly crumpled the tablecloth and put it under her armpit. Without looking at me, she walked out of the house with heavy steps. She slammed the door loudly and furiously as she left. The rain continued to rustle in the pitch darkness of the night outside the window. With a trembling hand, I poured myself some valerian, drank it, and realized that I couldn't stay in the house alone. I decided to go spend the night with my neighbors. She put on her rubber boots and quickly threw her raincoat over her shoulders. Just as she approached the door leading to the courtyard, she heard someone fiddling around on the porch. Having overcome my fear, I opened the door and was dumbfounded. A chain of some black dwarfs immediately moved along the high steps of the porch towards the open door. Apparently, they stood there in a silent line, waiting for the door to open in front of them. It seemed that they were now flowing into my house in an endless, dirty stream. There was no way to see each of them individually. As soon as I tried to peer at the next new black midget stepping over the threshold, he twitched like a haze and blurred against the general background of the stream. All I remember well were the long arms that trailed behind each one, first along the steps of the porch, then along the floor of the house. The very first person to enter, who led the column, had his right hand raised up. There was a burning torch sticking out of it. A sickening weakness spread through my body. My legs became weak, and I slid along the wall to the floor. But even sitting on the floor, she was taller than any of these pygmies. Their leader with the burning torch approached me. "Here is the one," he said in a squeaky treble, "who refused us lodging for the night." Then I saw and got a good look at his face. Having examined it, she screamed out loud in horror. It was very difficult to call it a face. It was completely missing eyes and nose. The lower jaw, with an ugly, thick, protruding lip pushed forward, was raised high up and lay on the wrinkled forehead of the midget. Thus, the whole face was a mouth, just one mouth. "Today we have a holiday," the jaw slammed. "Do you want us to dance in front of you?" I shook my head negatively. The dwarf got angry. He stamped his feet angrily. "Go now to Kiev to see your mother," he squeaked. "She has 4 days to live." With these words, he stepped towards the door opening into the courtyard. A stream of black, short, blurry figures poured through that door in the opposite direction. A column of black midgets left my house. When I slightly caught my breath and came to my senses, I picked myself up from the floor and ran across the yard to the neighboring house. And there she began pounding her fists at the window, shouting something inarticulate. And a second later, she lost consciousness. Neighbors called an ambulance. I was given an injection. I woke up. But when the doctors asked, "What's wrong with you? What happened?" didn't answer anything definite. The case would have immediately smelled like a mental hospital if I had honestly told the doctors everything about what I had experienced. The next day, early in the morning, I went to Kiev. There it turned out that my elderly mother suddenly became seriously ill. As the dwarf with the torch in his hand prophesied, Mommy died 4 days later. While sorting out the things left behind by the deceased, I suddenly discovered among them my tablecloth. Well, yes, the same one that the tall old woman in a white robe took with her when leaving my house in Novi Oskol. It was impossible to make a mistake. The tablecloth had a special rare pattern and had special marks, including a couple of characteristic grease stains. Having recognized the tablecloth, I broke out in a cold sweat. How, I would like to know, did she get into the house of my deceased mother?